their care and for the teachings about our earth and our relations. May we honor those teachings. Please observe a moment of silence so that council staff and members of the public can quietly reflect on our duty to the community that we are trying to serve. Thank you. Members of the public, staff, presenters, and members of council, please be advised that meetings are broadcast and recorded and made available on the internet. Is there any declaration of pecuniary interest or the general nature thereof? Seeing none, please note that in the minutes. We have no minutes or deputations. Question period. Did any questions come in? No. Questions. Whoa. We only have one mic, but it's powerful. All right, so we are going to go directly to our treasurer and I guess the manager of financial services and our treasurer, Mr. Lane Vance. It's over to you.
Thank you, Your Worship. The package that we have distributed includes everything we'll chat about today. There is a cover report that's provided that outlines what we're hoping to accomplish in terms of direction from council at the end of the day. And there are a few additional items that we'll deal with as we go through the meeting. What has worked in the past well is just questions as we go. The presentation is outlined in the same order as the binder. I tend to rely on the summary sheet, but at any point as we go through the presentation, if there's any questions about the detail and the backup, definitely just through the chair, raise your hand and we can deal with that. I typically can maybe give a little elevator speech about what that issue is, but then if it's any more than that, we have our management team here in person, and then I think we have some remoting in as well. So.
2 seconds, Lane.
Okay. Yeah, so the first slide is something that we're used to our council's used to seeing, just to outline and remind everybody of our budget cycle. So we're fairly early on in our finalization of documents and things like that. So department managers have been working on their capital budgets for some time, trying to finalize. And this time of year, it's always a bit of a challenge to figure out what projects are going to actually be completed by the time we hit December 31st, and therefore not need to be on the budget for 2024. And if there are going to be any carryovers, but I think at this point we did a pretty good job of figuring out where we're going to be at the end of the year. So we are here at our capital presentation today. Next big issue for us is the receipt of the assessment roll that gives us an idea of what our true growth has been over the past little bit. And so while building activity has definitely dropped off a bit in 2023, we're seeing a bit of a delay from MPAC. And so that delay is actually going to put us in better shape because it's the 2022 stuff that we're actually getting at this point, right? Which was a very active year for the building department. So we're hoping that our true growth would be in excess of 1%. And if it is, then that helps us out with some of those inflationary costs and things like that. Internally, we have the first couple of weeks of January is always quite busy. And so internally, we'll have the preliminary year end by about the 15th. And then we had pledged to distribute the budget materials to council on the 19th. This year, we followed along in the same, I think as maybe last year, or is this the first year? I'm not sure which, but we've delayed it, the presentation an additional week. So council has time to review the budget materials. But that doesn't impact on our budget adoption. We're still hoping mid-February for that. Okay, and yeah, so just As we work through, it's by department, but there may be points where questions come up. So for a good example would be Department 6. We have expenditures in Department 6 that may actually relate to some of the other departments, but because it's to do with facilities in there, we may provide some detail later in the presentation. So if there is something that we plan on talking about, I may just say to council, we are going to deal with that. If we can just delay that question. If not, we can deal with it at the time and as we go. So just a general comment before we get into the detail. The majority of the capital projects that council is going to see today, we've either dealt with in prior years' budgets or they're on a 10-year replacement schedule. Every year that we bring the replacement schedule back, it gives us an opportunity to take a look at our expenditures proposed over the next 10 years and update some of those. Definitely the kind of post-COVID, we're still dealing with the impacts of supply chain issues, increased pricing on a number of our things, and in particular in the fire department and in public works. The prices have really increased a lot in terms of our major capital items. And so we're still dealing with that, hoping that some of that will right size itself. But at the same time, realizing that we'll probably never go back to the pricing that we had back in 2020. We've got a number of reports that we've presented to council already, or grant applications where we've been approved. And so they're reflected in the budget. And we included a new section this year at the very end, just called pending, in an attempt to clean up the capital budget. So if we haven't received a grant approval at this point in time, then it may not be in the budget, but we recognize that we've got an outstanding grant application that might come in at some point in time. And the only item that I can just recall at this point that's in there is the campground project. We know that we're going to tender it this year. It's going to go up, but we haven't included any dollar value in here, but it is identified as a project in the capital budget because it does need to move ahead. Okay, so to jump into by departments, general government is our first area. So we do have some ongoing investments in furniture and fixtures. We also had a ergonomic assessment this year in our various operations, and so there's some additional expenditures there just to ensure that our staff are working safely in a proper way. Definitely some of the older staff, I can include myself in that have a hard time. We're trying to get into stand-up desks and different things like that, but it's hard to teach an old dog new tricks and sit up straight and all that kind of stuff. But Kim's doing the best that she can to take care of the younger staff and all of our staff with respect to that. So we included a little bit of additional expenditure in there with respect to that. We do have ongoing technology investments, and we have a replacement schedule that we've outlined there. And we'll maybe have some discussions later on with some of the other investments in IT. Specifically, our arenas this year, new investment areas with respect to the network and Wi-Fi upgrades. And so Jonathan and Michelle have met with Mike and his staff and figured out the best approach to ensure that we not only have proper security at our two main public sites of the arenas, but also segregated the private side of our operation so that we have a public Wi-Fi and then also the back end. So that upgrade is proposed to move ahead. It isn't something that had been on our long-term replacement schedule, but I think in terms of where we're moving with outreach to the community, everybody has the device, spend a lot of time at the arenas. I think it's just a good level of service. But generally not a lot of, that's a new area, that one, but not a lot of new investments, just basically replacements and things that we need to be doing to take care of our network and our security. Moving on to Department 6. Before we get into the heavy details, Council would recall.
Excuse me, there's a question in
Department 5, yeah.
Department 5 from Deputy Mayor Black.
Thanks, Blaine. You have a budgeted amount of 27,100 in in your request, but your forecast actually shows 30,600. When you add up the three figures for items for replacement. Is that just
What page you on?
so that would be this is page, but it's Department 5. It's the PC technology replacement forecast. You have 27,100, and I think that actually adds up to 30,600. The three items: the personal computer replacement, switches, routers, and batteries.
I think that we've included in that items some items we're going to discuss in closed session.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
All right, Department 6.
Sure. So before we get into some of our sheets that we've actually outlined, I wanted to just update council on our asset management program. So the next step in the asset management will come in July of 2024 when we add in other assets which were not already included in our core assets. And so core assets were the say roads, water, sewer, stormwater, bridges and structures. So one of our large assets, which is not yet included, is the facilities. So we had Ron Odd Consultants out of City Kawartha Lakes, and he's completed a review for asset management. We're about a month behind of where we had hoped to be at this point, but we do have a meeting with Ron next week and senior staff to go through our facilities assessment. He's also outlined a very good process in terms of taking a look over the next 10 years on our investments. And so what we've done, because we haven't identified actual projects yet, we've set aside the approximate amount that we invest on an annual basis from our UMP fund. And part of that work would be for what he has referred to as destructive investigation. And so there's just a couple photos there of examples of destructive investigation. So if we have an area that we're having maybe leaks in a ceiling, or there's a section that he's identified that there's shifting in a structure, different things like that. So he's identified that he's went through every structure that we have. He started right at the parking lots and went all the way through to the roof and the HVAC and everything else. So he's worked really well with Mike's folks and Jerry in particular. And so he's put together this overall spreadsheet. So what we'll be doing over the next period of time is reviewing those, trying to prioritize them. And the hope is that by the time we get to our final budget presentation, that we would actually be able to show how that $200,000 is going to be spent in 2024, and then actually roll it out over the next 10 years as well. And so there's kind of two things there. One is, or maybe three, I guess. One is that everybody looks at a building that we've recently did and said, well, that building's brand new, right? Except when we actually get looking at it, it's probably 12 years old, right? So that was one of the first things that came to light when we did our review. The other is that as we roll these things out, we need to have regard for the fact that we need to have recommendations that are going to serve us long term. So that there's quite often there's a quick fix, but then in terms of long-term investments in buildings that we're going to have, we need to make a long-term investment. So quite often those things cost a little bit more. We've got a number of facilities, and I would think probably Hall 2 in Lakefield is probably the best example, where we've been involved in repairs over the years, and we did little repairs here and there. We tried to replace sections of flashing, parts of roofs, things like that. But I think that's a good example where we're going to have to really spend some additional funds and go ahead and fix it once. And I guess the third one would be, we own a lot of facilities, and some of them are active in our operations and some community groups are involved in them. And so we have two facilities in particular, the Innismore Curling Club and the old Innismore Municipal Office, where the Lions building is right now in that complex. those two facilities need some significant work. So they're investments that really we need to make in our infrastructure, but we're not going to see real returns in terms of what we do on a daily basis. So we just want to make sure that we plan that out appropriately and that we present to council a good plan. Overall, we've made good investments over the last decade or so. So things, roofs and HVAC systems and things like that are in fairly good shape. But there still are significant repairs over the next 10. And that number ranges anywhere from about $6 million to $8 million of investments over a 10-year period. So it's significant. But as I mentioned, it's some of these other things that once we make those investments, we shouldn't have to worry about it for another 10 or 20 years. And I guess just one last little point that's on that slide is, so there are currently no expenses included in what is being presented to council today for what I'm just chatted about, but we have earmarked $200,000 out of that unconditional reserve that would pay for that. So all things being equal, when we get to the final budget presentation in January, Mike and I will have had a chance to bring a comprehensive report to council at that point in time and say, this is how we're going to spend that $200,000.
So Lane, I just wanted to mention, when you do that evaluation, one of the things you're going to be talking about with the next slide is painting of the municipal offices here, and they certainly need it upstairs. But when we were doing a tour at one point, the fire hall in Lakefield looked like it hadn't been painted in a long, long time. And so will that come to light when you do these investigations?
Yeah, so there's a couple of things there. So the repair or the painting and finishes upstairs, the areas that we're talking about there, we already know that they're in good shape, so they haven't been identified in the assessment as an area of concern. There is an area by the front lobby area that we have some roofing issues that we've looked at there, but they're not going to be anywhere near the drywall work or any of the exterior finishes that we talked about. And because of the kind of the public nature of the municipal office, CEDO local government, and the fact we've got a lot of folks through the front area, that's why we propose that instead of deferring that aspect of it. With respect to Hall 2 and the painting, I don't know if, I think that part of the paint in there is original paint, so it's definitely old. It's tired, but the area of repair that I was mentioning before, in between the ambulance bay and the fire hall, there are definitely issues there to do with vapor barrier, flashing issues on that. So we haven't proposed to go ahead with the painting at this point in time because we need to take care of the cause of some of these issues first. But that will be on that assessment for sure. And as I mentioned, Ron's review is exhaustive. It went right from the condition of the asphalt parking lots all the way through to what is the final finish. So it will be in that assessment for sure.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Boyko.
Thank you, Mayor Sands, through you. Lane, the asset management review, and I remember reading that and being totally impressed with the amount of work done on it. Was there discussion at that time, or do you believe that discussion should take place regarding surplus assets, buildings, property that you believe we could look at selling rather than spending the money to bring them back up to a standard? Right.
Yeah. So we definitely have identified what we feel are surplus lands. So there is a registry of surplus lands. A number of years ago, and mentioned, I think it'd be just a few years, but it's probably 10 years ago, we did begin to bring properties forward to council with recommendations. There are definitely challenges for council in that regard, because some of them may be a community park, which maybe in today's standards isn't really much of a parkland and an area for passive or active area, but it's an area that the local community uses. So I can think of one over in the south end of the township in particular. We brought that forward, pretty much filled the gallery, and didn't end up selling it because it was, important to that area of the community. So we definitely have vacant lands identified in that area. It's something I think that Angie and Tanya have looked at over the years. With respect to buildings, Ron in his would definitely say that there's a couple of buildings that we still actively use that we should consider just demolishing, because they're at a point where, you know, they're great for storage, but if you're going to continue to invest in them, maybe you can do it in a more effective way, right? The two buildings that I had mentioned before are challenging ones, because the Ennismore Curling Club is we own the building. We have a great lease. We've got a great tenant. They're very active in their operation of it, and in that, and actually bringing recommendations of how we should make investments. But it's something that just isn't part of our operation. We are going to chat a little bit later about property up on our gravel pit, where we're definitely saying in this instance, rather than getting into the rental business, we should probably divest and get rid of it. So yeah, we're looking at that where
Okay.
it makes sense.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Deputy Mayor Black.
Thank you, through you, Mayor Dennis. I brought up the issue of a list of lands that significant lands that the township owns. So would it be possible to have that included with the budget information?
Yeah, we can definitely, like in terms of link, maybe would be the better way. I'm not sure.
Yeah, so for sure, Ron, we haven't lost track of that. We know that we want to do that and bring that forward to council. I'm just not quite sure that we would be at the point in January to have that all fleshed out for you, but definitely you'll see that on the work plan, because that is something we want to bring forward to council.
Yeah, I think it's again, given the pressures that we're gonna have on the budget this year, if there's an opportunity to take some of that pressure off by the sale of a piece of property that's redundant to the community, would help bring taxes down on the budget. So I think that's maybe part of our consideration, may not be. We don't know what the number is yet, but if we could look at that list and identify any properties that might be sold to help with keeping the annual budget increase down, I'd like to have that option.
Yeah, so and Lane did mention the one property that we're looking to move and sell the house. I think typically though, we wouldn't use that type of revenue to offset tax increases. It typically would go to a reserve, because again, you're kind of putting yourself behind if you use that type of a revenue to offset what you need in taxes to maintain your service level. And maybe
This may be a year that has to be looked at. Unfortunately, talking some pretty high tax rate increases in a time when people really can't afford it. So we may not have done it in the past, but maybe something that we have to look at moving forward.
Councillor Koulis.
Thank you for you. Before the January meeting, if you guys are not already ready for us, can you pass on those previous reports? I'd love to know the history of what's already been talked about, like what properties and the decisions. Or if you don't share it with us, when you do the report, can you provide a history of previous decisions just to really flesh out how the context has it?
I think that'd be quite comprehensive, and I think that's going to be part of the overall report that we are providing to council. I think we started that review in 2004, so we've looked at things over the course of that whole from 2004 moving forward. So there's quite a bit of history there, and I'm not sure I have it all in one spot. So I'm not sure how much I can get together for January for that.
What you do have, is it possible? Like, are they electronic? Can you pass them on, or can you leave them in my spare
We-
time?
Yeah, we'll go back and check. The inventory that we have, I'm just not sure what format it's in. It may have been before we actually did our electronic agendas, but we'll see what we have. Yep.
And the last area here before we leave this slide is with respect to the Bickle Cemetery. And this is the only cemetery that the township is actually responsible for. Lots of cemeteries in the township, but all the remainder are all taken care of either by churches or other organizations. So you can see based on the photo that's coming up here, sorry. it's in really pretty tough shape, the fencing that's around that actual area. This is one of those areas that we've recommended sole sourcing. We've got a local tradesman who does excellent work. He's worked with us in the past, provided what we feel is good value for dollar in terms of the pricing. And he could replicate what is basically there, and that's the goal of the Heritage Committee. So basically putting in place exactly what's there, only in a lot better shape. So I think this one in particular is made of oak, and it's got different mortise and tenon joints and things like that. So he has the ability to do it. He's the kind of guy that can actually fabricate what's needed. He doesn't have to go out and purchase it and pay top dollar for it. So as you can see, it's in pretty tough shape, and it is the only cemetery that we're responsible for. I think a few years ago, Mike and his crew might have went through the property and cleaned it up quite a bit. So they actually maintain it in terms of grass cutting and things like that at this point in time too.
We are very lucky that we have volunteers that look after the other cemeteries that are in our township. And I know that a couple of them are getting up there in age. So I'm just hoping that someone else will come forward to keep track of them and look after them. Deputy Mayor Black.
Thank you, through Mayor Sens. Was there any consideration to using something that's less maintenance required as far as, I mean, there are lots of very decorative aluminum type fencing and posts that won't deteriorate in the weather. You're putting wood back on there with paint on it is 10 years from now, we're going to be having the same conversation as opposed to something that's a little more weather resistant. Is any consideration for that?
I actually have a hand up from Councillor Henry.
Thank you, through you, Mayor Sines. The Municipal Heritage Committee has been addressing this property. Actually, we've spoken with Fleming College and didn't hear anything back to them on doing the work to replace this fencing. We do have a classroom at TAS that's looking at taking on this project. It is mortise and tenon, so there is some question as to the quality of the workmanship that we're going to see. However, at this time, they are willing to step up and take this on. So it might actually be a lower figure, or maybe we can look at maybe allocating some of the funds for buying the materials and working in partnership with the school, possibly.
And do anybody want to add to that answer?
I think that the other key thing, and I understand Deputy Mayor is mentioning definitely long-term. I just chatted about a few minutes ago, long-term investments. That's what we're looking at. But under the Heritage Committee, it's more like for like, right? So that's why we're looking at what we're doing.
Yeah, I do understand that part of it for sure, but there's some pretty nice fencing out there nowadays. That's no maintenance. Thanks.
Okay, just carrying on in Department 6, the old police services building, the old chamber building, but what we're referring to it now is the old post office. The remaining building work to be completed there is some aesthetic repairs out front to the masonry. So when that second step at the front came off, there's just doesn't kind of leave the front of the building completed. So Mike and his crew have sourced some locals product, I guess is the best way to say it, and then we'll be putting together a program to get that completed. So that would then finish up that building. There is also proposed in the budget a bit of interlock replacement to be done out front. So it would be nice to have that whole project completed.
Actually, I have a question. The clock isn't working. The building looks really great, all the work and money we put into refurbishing it, but the clock has the wrong time. So is there a chance maybe we could have one twice a day? It's right. Okay.
Yeah, so I'll probably get Mike to weigh in on that. We definitely invested some money in the inner workings of the clock a number of years ago, and And we found out shortly thereafter that the chips that went into the electronics didn't account for daylight savings time, right? There is definitely a whole electronic component now to do with the clock that wasn't there before. So those repairs should be easier, but I might just get Mike to maybe weigh in on next steps on that.
Little disappointed you guys are stealing my jokes. Yes, in fact, we have a company that's confident. They did work with Scott. There were a few chip issues, but there is a full control system on that for the clock in the electrical closet that we've made sure we've maintained. And once this project is done, so hopefully for the start of next year, we will have the clock running more than twice a day. Right, being correct, more than twice.
Good to hear. Thank you.
Yeah.
Councillor Boyko, you had a question.
Thank you through your Mayor Sines. That is one of the questions that I was going to ask. The other is a point that I've raised before, and that is the sign that is just to the left of where the picture is cut off. That is faded. It's old and should be removed anyway. But the other reason that it should be removed is that it identifies the building as the Lakefield Police Department, which it obviously no longer is. And when the skilled craftsmen are there and doing some of that work, part of the reason that I was told before that the sign shouldn't be removed is we don't know what's behind it. Well, it's time to take it down and see what's behind it and get it fixed. And maybe that might increase this budget, but it still seems to me as something that should be done. So I ask your thoughts on that.
Through you, Madam Mayor. We actually did a fair bit of looking into that because it speaks to the police services. It doesn't actually name the building. It names who's on the police services at the time that it was installed. It was purpose built for that area. And if you look at the windows, if we take it off, we're going to have a bigger cavity to have to address. And we already have an old post office brass plaque that historically makes sense to maintain there. I think it does need cleaning up without a question. And I do have a picture, but unfortunately that be on my phone that shows it because Megan took some great images of it to show exactly. They've taken that lintel or the top beveled ledge and actually cut that out so it would take this. So we would be into having to remove more of these. And the windowsill doesn't exist because they built it into the short window. I'm just wondering if I can email it because the picture truly does say more than several thousand words. Email it to
Tanya.
Tanya, okay?
That's history.
Well, and it doesn't say, it speaks to the police services board at the time. So it's not, and once I have it up, sorry.
Angie.
Oh, I will just note as well that we are putting a sign on the building where the police are currently located as well. So that should help
I will
identify
pass
where
that
the
al-
police are.
I
Yeah,
will pass that along. We'll be very happy
they're
to do that.
definitely aware. Yeah.
Excellent.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Is the word police above the doorway coming up?
It's been gone for a long time.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That's an old picture.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
Through the
'Cause-
chair, please, people.
Sorry, through you, Madam Mayor. That is off, as is the pad is changed. The only thing that was going to be time sensitive and weather sensitive was the replacing and fixing up the wall there because it takes some splitting and whatnot, and you can't install that in the colder weather. I've got it here. I'll forward it to you, Tanya.
Mike, I have a screenshot if you want me to share that. That's helpful.
I don't know.
In here.
So when you say you have a screenshot, 'cause I have an image of it as well. Um, oh, I see. Okay, there we go. Yeah. So you can see that that it's actually been, it's been purpose and custom fit in there. And there is no ledge on that one window. So we would have to, we either make it a continuous ledge and add a bigger window, or have a ledge underneath that. So and if you can zoom in even a little bit more, you can see that that it is about the police services, like the board that would have been in place at that time. Looking to the left of that, looking south of that, Tanya, you'll also see that there is a post office one, and it's not just there you go, right there. Yep. So right beside the emergency phone, to the left of the door in the picture, there's a post office plaque that's brass. I wouldn't suggest taking that off either, even though it's not a post office anymore. If you can zoom in, yeah, and to the left. Even though it's not a post office anymore, I don't think it'll confuse people.
No.
It's historical in nature. Yeah. Good to see those
Councillor
pictures.
Henry?
Thank you, through you, Mayor Sennis. I don't know how much time we're actually gonna have to spend on this today.
Yeah.
However, this is
We're not getting
historical
far fast.
significance. All the updated signage has already been removed from the building. And even on the street post, maybe we're on Google Street View and we altered it, we'd actually see that there's a metal frame on the light post or street light that acknowledges the building, has it in a cutout in metal, and states here it was there. So other than fixing up the bricks on the front, I think we should probably leave it alone and focus more on getting a tenant in there.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Thank you. Lane?
Okay, and final little bit in Department 6 is municipal land. So we do annually have a placeholder for lands, appraisals, things like that. So it's $10,000 it's set up. That's the only amount which is funded through operating funds. So it could be taxes, but it's more often than not, it's actually rent payments that are in Department 6 that offset those expenses. So it is just a placeholder amount, $10,000. And if something comes up, then we have some money to do maybe finalize a survey, get a little bit of appraisal, and it supports some of the things we've chatted about previously. The other issue that we chatted about was the Bullock property, which is where our gravel pit is. So that was purchased a number of years ago for the aggregate that's on the property. It's supplied us with immense amounts of aggregate and will into the future. But under our lease agreement and under the purchase agreement, the existing owners could stay there until they no longer needed the property. Both of those owners have actually passed away at this point in time. So we've Angie and Janice have been working with the family over this last year or so to finalize, get the house cleaned out, different things like that. They might have had a short-term rental in there for a period of time. But what's being recommended under the audit report is that the house would actually be moved off the site. It's proposed that any of the storage buildings, the garage, there's a bit of a mezzanine or a breezeway off of the garage, that would stay and be available for storage. But it would actually look at an RFP that would either basically sell the house, but get it moved off the site and then try to maximize the return on that.
Are you looking for direction on that now with a motion? Or
We could have it now, or I just put the in highlight there because I hadn't included that on my cover report. So if it's up to council. We can deal with it now or we can just add it to the direction on the. at the
Okay,
end.
do I have someone who will move that? Deputy Mayor Black?
Just a question before any motion. Was consideration given to severing the house and a lot off of the property and still allowing us access to the pit and the accessory building?
Yeah, I would say yes. We haven't really had a good opportunity to explore the front part of the property. So there's definitely sand available at the corner, but we haven't really did a lot of exploration of the what you would say is the lot and different things like that, right? So did you want to weigh in on that?
Yeah.
Janice?
But yeah, Lane's absolutely right. We're still, doing some investigations for what sand material will be there, but we did take a really good look at the property to see if there was an area where we could maybe create a lot and move the house ourselves, but there really isn't any property or any parcel that could be created that would meet the current planning policies.
So would you be looking at a motion that in the event it's found that nothing else can be done, that we get an RFP to move it? Is that the direction you're looking for?
Yeah, for sure. That's what we're looking for, is direction to go through an RFP process. We do have some folks that we think might be interested. So that RFP would provide for the house to be moved from the property by whoever was a successful bidder.
All right, are my colleagues interested in putting a motion forward? Councillor Henry moving it. Councillor Boyko seconding it. All in favor? It's carried. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Madam Mayor. So the other aspect of that is definitely some additional test pits and exploration of that site, just to see what is available on the front part of the property. There's a small section that's currently being farmed, so we'll probably look at that as well and see if there's a tenant farmer or the existing farmer would be interested in that for a period of time. Yeah, sounds like they are. And so just to maximize those returns. And then in terms of securing the property, the storage buildings as well, we always have a bit in our gravel pit department to ensure that there's security of our gravel pit. So say a gate, additional little bit of fencing, those types of things. So we'll secure the property. And that was all I had on Department 6. Moving over to the fire department, we have updated the replacement schedule and also marginally increased our yearly contribution over the next 10 years. As I mentioned previously, the apparatus and the rolling stock has really increased in value, increased in price over the last few years. And so we're hoping that when we get out into the later years, maybe that will be right sized a bit, but I think this is a pretty realistic figure at this point in time. In addition, while the rolling stock tends to get most of the attention, equally important things like SCBA and personal protective equipment. So we're trying to replace bunker gear 15 sets a year to ensure that we're up to date on that, protection of our volunteer firefighters. But a lot of the other areas are typical annual purchases, hose and nozzle replacement as it's tested and required, small equipment replacement. Definitely heard when we were looking at things like this, the battery storage facility, there's always different things that we have to have regard for and different bits of equipment, but generally the schedule's been updated. We take it into account. A bit of a change was with respect to the computer update and software. So there's typically about $3,000 that's put in there every few years. So we do need to move ahead to upgrade our software. I will say that our IT folks here did a great job with a short period of time to ensure that we have access to our data that we have, because the existing company was trying to force us in relatively short order to move to a different platform. In looking at their software and looking at what other services are using in the area, we're looking at moving to a different software, and that would be done in the first quarter of next year. So it would be FirePro 2. It would still all be in-house and actually provides us maybe with a little bit more functionality in terms of HR, equipment maintenance, and different things like that. But that would all be funded through the fire equipment reserve.
Question from Deputy Mayor Black.
Thank you, through your Mayor Sense. So the software change has always been challenging and troubling for me in my previous life. Are we going to be able to transition all the information over the bridge program to bring it across electronically, or do we have to manually load all the old info and stats into the system?
Yeah, no, it's an excellent question. In terms of what Jonathan and Michelle have been able to do so far, no, that it won't have to be rekeyed or anything like that. And there will be a robust system to ensure that the data that was there before is the same data that comes across. So we'll have all of that historical data. I think the key thing about this new software as well, there's a lot more services in the area that use it. So that the strength of a user group I found is always great if you have a lot of local users, and then that user group can actually put more pressure on the software company to make improvements and things like that as well. And you also have that local strength of how the users are. You always have a power user at a different municipality that you can rely on somehow. So
yeah, there's always great promises that it can come across easily from the new software provider, but that's not always the case. So
that's exactly right.
Councillor Boyko.
Through you, Mayor Sennis, Lane, an issue of concern to me on Department 10 is the reserves, where we look at what the reserves are going to be predicted to be in 2024. But then when it moves out to 2031, we see a deficit of over $500,000. I wonder if this is a concern of yours as well, and what can be done to take a look at this.
Yeah, so definitely when anything is red around it, that's a concern of the fire department and well, actually maybe not a concern of the fire department because they like red stuff, but I don't like red stuff for sure. So yeah, there's a number of things that Janice and I have definitely met with the chief and deputy chief. We've tasked them with a few chores really over the next year or so. Reach out to their colleagues. We would expect they're finding the same thing. Have regard for the existing mutual aid agreement that we have in place in the county, and ensure that while everybody shares in mutual aid, we want to ensure that everybody is sharing equally in mutual aid, and that people aren't just looking at Selwyn Township to be their first go-to for mutual aid. And the other is to take a look at our useful life of our equipment and ensure, it's we have a good useful life, but can it be stretched a little bit further, and is it not going to cost us a lot in terms of annual maintenance to do that? I mentioned before that we're hoping that maybe the market might right size a little bit, so it provides a little relief. And after all of those things are completed, we will have some flexibility down the road with respect to our unconditional grant for UMP. And much the same way that we have kind of propped up the Public Works Reserve over the last few years, we would have the ability to do that with fire as well. Yeah, and not just out into 2031, but by the time we get to 2034, $1 million, right? So yeah, definitely a concern. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, so that's the fire department. No other expenditures with respect to the building department this year. We have we received our hybrid units. So we've got 2 hybrids now in place. The building department. We are continuing to review the bio enforcement vehicle, which is a half-ton, but we'll take a look at that. And Robert's definitely dealing with Chris on that to take a look at that over the next little while. I think we're generally pleased with the 2 hybrids, and we're having a system now kind of set up for charging, and with the additional charging unit out front now too, it works out really well. So, but no expenditures there, but we have updated the schedule, and Robert's taking a look at that, and nothing active in the budget this year for that. Moving over into roads, definitely a number of significant investments in roads, and you'll see later with the pie chart, if you see a pie, there's a very small section which is everything else, and then the majority of the pie is investments in public works and roads and infrastructure of that sort. So Strickland Street is a significant capital project coming forward this year. It includes a section of Prospect as well. That is under our ISIP grant project, and It included some improvements at our water treatment plant. Also includes some retrofits at our standpipe up on top of the hill at Strickland, which has been out of service and is currently out of service right now. But this is something that's a little bit more tangible to the public, Strickland Street, in terms of the repair there. A good section of the project is actually funded through water main replacement, but there is a section to do with roads because we need to be accountable under the grant. A lot of the curb work, and at this point we've reviewed the sidewalk and it's part of our roads need study. So sidewalk will definitely be replaced in certain areas if required, but most of it is just where the water services would go in. So a couple bays on either side. I think most of the work would be more curb and gutter work, I think, as we work through there. And as I mentioned, that's an ISIP grant. So I think it's 2/3. I'm not sure if it's exactly 66%, but 2/3 funding from the feds in the province.
Councillor Boyka.
Thank you for that. I don't question the necessity of this work at all, but through you, Mayor Senes, could you tell me a little bit about what will be done to try to alleviate some of the difficulties of traffic flow through that area while the construction's going on, and with respect to the people who are living on Strickland and that part of Prospect Street? How will that be handled?
Through you, Madam Mayor. It'd be very similar to Water Street. There'd be a traffic control plan done up by the selected contractor. That would get approved by the township and the county as well, because they'd have to approve that for Queen Street. My thought would be it'd be local traffic only, similar to Water Street. As they're digging up the road, there's just going to be a point where in time where it's not going to be passable. So it'd be restricted to local traffic within there. Prior to construction, as typically done with our other projects, there would be a letter sent out to the homeowners advising the scope of the project. There'd be contact information for Sullivan staff, as well as typically the contract administrator or the constructor to reach out with any concerns. But, a project like that, we'd hope, a similar company like an Accurex or somebody like that would bid on something like that, because, we had a good relationship with them on Water Street. I think they were very accommodating to all the residents on Water Street.
Right.
So, yeah, that's what we hope that would happen next year as well.
Excellent. If I could just ask one follow, what do you predict? Not to hold you to a specific date at all, but what do you predict of the timing of this work? When do you hope it will begin and be done?
Yeah, I mean, I would suspect at the start of the summer, late spring.
In the summer and spring.
Typically, yeah, typically after half loads come off, contractors are starting to mobilize.
Right.
I suspect that would take all the summer, and it'd be probably into the fall when they're looking to pave and do the asphalt works.
Okay, excellent. Thank you.
Maybe as a side benefit, people will find a different route and continue with it.
So Strickland
Councillor
Street.
Koulis.
Oh, sorry.
Follow-up question, so I want to make sure my math is right. For Strickland Street, where it says 40% is through the eligible federal funding and then 30 is provincial, and we're making up the other 30% possibly through the road reservation, that's like over $200,000, right? It's 219, I think.
That's correct.
Okay,
Yes.
sure. 'Cause
Yeah.
the new-
It's
not in
it's here.
correctly.
Yes.
The
But
sheet.
that's the summary sheet. though.
Yes.
Not on the actual description of it, it's not there. So I just want to make sure that the numbers are aligned.
Yeah, no, that's definitely correct. Yeah, and the detailed sheets definitely outline the project, but then on that summary sheet that shows the proposed funding at this point in time. Yeah. So as Adam had outlined, Strickland Street, it will be put out for bids for contractor. So we'd have outside contractor that would do that, but we still have a good crew in terms of rural road rebuilds and things like that. So our own forces would be continuing to look at road renewal, and this year's project is the 6th line. And actually I think the majority of the 6th line of what we've outlined. So it's right from shoulder work, digging out spots that are soft or need repair. We did have some funding that was made available when the work down on the locks was completed. So that was part of an agreement, and it was actually the building department was involved in that at the time. But those funds will be put into the reserve for roads, and then we'll be pulling those out and applying them against this actual job. So as I mentioned, own forces, we will have a subcontractor that would do the resurfacing work when it's all said and done.
Councillor Boyko. Oh, sorry.
Sure.
Yeah.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor Senna. So the sixth line, between which roads is this piece? It's hard to tell from the picture where
He said the entire thing.
the entire thing, both ends.
Yep.
All the way. Okay.
Yep.
You know, we've been talking a lot about sidewalks and walking surfaces and walkability and access, you know, for everybody to use surfaces, cycling, etc. Is the finished surface going to be wide enough to have one of the shoulders paved for people to walk on?
I'll probably get Adam to just weigh in on the details of it. We've traditionally tried to expand the paved surface or the tar and chip surface as wide as possible to accommodate that, but maybe I'll let Adam just kind of weigh in on that.
Yeah, through you, Madam Mayor. Lane's right. Yeah, typically when we do a resurfacing job or a road job, what we try to do is almost eliminate a gravel shoulder. So we do surface treat the full width. Maintaining a 1/2 meter gravel shoulder is kind of tricky at times. So it's a benefit to us for maintenance, but it does provide some extra space if people do choose to walk or cycle along there. We don't necessarily designate that as a cycling lane or a pedestrian walkway because that has some ramifications as
Liability.
far as minimum maintenance standards go.
Yeah.
But it does allow enough spot space, like typically for people to walk or bike, if they so choose.
Yeah, just follow up. Yeah, no, I mean, I lived on the 7th line for almost 30 years, and again, the 1/2 meter shoulder is pretty narrow to be walking on, a 1.5 foot space. I don't know if there's any opportunity to widen that in spots. I know with the 7th line reconstruction was back probably 20 some odd years ago. They did widen some of the shoulders because the road was narrow in spots to begin with, and particularly through the low-lying areas. The road narrowed quite a bit and barely enough for 2 vehicles to pass at full speeds.
Through you, Madam Mayor. Yeah, we try to where we can, and I think this picture here's a good example on the 6th line. That's a low to break up. There's a whole culvert. You actually try to build that road back a little bit to get into that water, get everything drained properly.
Yeah.
Right.
So in that situation there, we could widen a little bit. But just surface treating the shoulders in itself and then being able to wing that snow back that much further, because typically the shoulders are for snow storage.
Right.
So if we do surface treat the shoulders a bit more, it allows us to wing that snow back a little further. So it does, in a sense, create a little bit more space. But there are some areas where it's narrow, and you know, that's just not an opportunity where we can do that, right? Because it's not as simple as just making the road wider. We have to dig up that whole road surface. All the vegetation has to get removed. The road bed has to get filled. It's a little bigger task in some cases, but where we can, we try to.
Yeah, thank you. No, it just, that has to be a consideration when we're rehabbing these roads these days. Society's changed. People want to go for walks, take their dog out and so on. So we need to make sure there's a safe surface for them as well. Thank you.
Councillor Boyko, do you had your hand up?
That was my question. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank.
Okay.
Oh, Councillor Koulis.
I just have a clarification question for the microsurfing. Where is the Waterford subdivision? I'm not sure.
We weren't there yet, but okay.
Sorry, I just.
You're
thought
jumping
it was
the-
going into it, though,
yeah.
or-
Through you, Madam Mayor, it's right adjacent to the curling club.
Okay.
Yeah, just east of the
I
curling
think
club.
I just.
And
don't
that's
think I
Waterford.
called.
Lane.
I just think, what
Sure.
is this?
Sure, and yeah, so that comment definitely, so there is less in resurfacing and more in microsurfacing plan for 2024. So that area that the Councillor Koulis was asking about, yeah, right beside the curling club, I think the other area is down in towards Gifford, I think down in towards there. We've used microsurfacing, I don't know, probably for 5 years now. I think Skyline Road was the first one that was done. It was an asphalt surface. Concession Street in Lakefield. There were a couple of years of a cluster of asphalt roads in the Bridgenorth area that were treated. Definitely has a positive impact, not only on sealing the top of the road, but in terms of rideability and appearance. There's also a very practical side of it in the winter times. The darker the road surface, the quicker the ice off So we're looking at that as well. But this is, the county has used it successfully on tar and chip roads. It's the first time that we're going to use it on tar and chip roads. And so just a little bit different approach, but thinking it's going to be a way that we can seal the top of that roadbed and then have other benefits as well. Onto Water Street. So phase 3, a 3-year project, and it'll be great to have that project completed. A final lift of asphalt, pavement markings, all those types of things. We have on an annual basis had to increase asphalt prices based on an index. That's something that's relatively new for us, maybe in the last decade or so that's come along. It was using an index protects the municipality to a certain extent, so that contractors 3 years ago didn't have to provide just some exorbitant price and a guess. So they provide the best price at the time, and then they're assured that we're going to apply an annual pavement index to that, and our engineer takes care of doing that. So that it'll be nice to have that done and pavement markings in place, and then of course then we'll move on to Strickland Street.
Actually, who is on the TAC team for Ward Street?
So Adam and the clerk.
Okay, can you let us know how things are going with the county with that? At what point are they?
Through you, Madam Mayor. Yeah, we're still going through design stages for Ward Street right now, so I don't even think we've got a 30% design. It's just preliminary discussions through that TAC team on what the scope of work is going to be. So they've started the EA process on that. We've got to work our way through that EA process and then develop a detailed design and tendering for that.
So they haven't come to a decision as to what the width is going to be yet?
We haven't defined the width yet. They're looking at traffic studies right now just to determine the flows of traffic and where some of the concerns are along Ward Street. So once that's identified, then they progress through the widths and the actual road construction and the detail.
Okay, thank you. Deputy Mayor Black.
Yeah, through you, Mayor Sennis, what's the approach as far as public input to businesses and Greater North getting a say in what the final plan looks like? How's that going to be communicated, or what the opportunity would be?
Through you, Madam Mayor, there'll be public consultation and yeah, at this point with the EA process, they've all been notified. The consultant has talked to a lot of businesses along there already, but really there's no design plan yet to really weigh in on, but there will be a lot of public consultation on that and a public information center as well once designs actually kind of refined a bit.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Councillor Koulis.
I just want to follow up on that. So these images that are provided for Ward Street in regards to the CIP that are just below it, are they trying to encourage keeping those designs, or are they just kind of tossing those out and restarting from scratch? Like, I'm just not sure where the CIP fits into this Ward Street now that time has progressed so much.
I'll maybe through your worship, maybe defer to Anne. She's a little more familiar with that CIP. Yeah.
Yeah, so there have been a couple of different design concepts for Ward Street based on the EA process in the past. So because we don't have a final kind of design at this point, we don't have an idea in terms of where the actual CIP improvements will be located. So what you see in the package is kind of a design based on a previous iteration of the EA. It could be similar if we move forward with that similar road width, but it may get adjusted depending on what the final decision is on the actual travel portion of the road. So our contribution to the design is to really finalize where those CIP components will be located once we know what the design of Ward Street is going to look like.
Just because, again, I know I'm new to council, I've only here a year and these designs are older, but even the designs that I'm seeing right now, I know that some of the business owners would not be cool with them. So I'm just wondering, this feeds into Deputy Mayor Black's comment about consultation, because I think there does need to be another series of consultation. It would be really helpful to know what that is. So we'll happy to wait for that, but just to like put that on the red dot there.
Okay, back to just kind of the continuation of Water Street. So coming around the corner, as we look to finalize the Water Street construction project, Adam and the engineers took a look at concession, which is right at the corner of the arena out to Queen Street. Definitely some issues there with the pavement, a little bit of cracking in different spots. There's been, I think, a couple of road cuts, things like that. So this would just allow this section as well to be milled, and then it would be a continuous asphalt, new asphalt right from Queen Street right around to basically Queen Street again down by the bridge. So just felt that this was good value for dollar, adding this component. It's a short little block, and it would take care of some of the issues that we'll run into there, and it would just complete the project. To the public, it would make a lot of sense, I think. Innismore CIP. So we had a report before council here just a little while ago about a rethink on that. We have had a number of reports, but market prices once again kind of conspired against us on this one. So taking a bit of a rethink of the scope of the project and some of our off-road improvements, some of those CIP improvements. And I think as Angie mentioned in the report, or Angie and Adam's report, the sub-trades, maybe looking at putting an allowance in for that, or earmarking a particular sub-trade. That seemed to be an area that there was a lot of variance in our different market rates that came back. So moving ahead with the detailed design for a retender on
that. Deputy Mayor Black.
Thank you, through Mayor Tennis. I see in the report that the construction is not planned until 2025. Given that this has already been delayed, is there any chance it can get done in 2024? I mean, the changes to the plan shouldn't be that significant. Obviously looking at taking some things out. But is there any chance it could be done in 2024? This is
not with respect to the existing finances that we have in place.
We're going to put a big red bow around 2025 for Ennismore. All of us are.
Moving on from that, the last project is some sidewalk work, actually interlock replacement. So council may recall we had once again a larger project plan last year, had some grant dollars included, but pricing just didn't allow that to proceed. So we did do sections up in around the Royal Bank, post office, and down this. The photos here are right beside Sunshine Spa. You can tell I don't go there. And it's right across the road from the area that we're talking about, the old post office. And so hoping that we get similar pricing and we'd be able to clean that project up at the old post office. There are some street amenities that would go on as well, but mostly just new concrete work, colored brushed concrete.
Thank you, through Mayor Tennis. You know, the cement work that's been done in the village is nice. I think it's an improvement over the interlock that got the weeds growing through it all summer. And from a maintenance point of view, it's certainly a better option for the municipality from a cost perspective. But a lot of the concrete that's done now, particularly in areas like this, has got the impressed that it makes it look like it's interlocked, but it's not. Is that an option moving forward? Because this piece of concrete that we're replacing around the post office is a massive surface, and to do it all in one sheet of cement, I don't think it's going to. I don't think it's going to look great. But you know, this stuff where they just put the mat over top of the concrete and it looks like interlock, I think is a better option, from in my view, anyways, aesthetically. I don't know if there's other issues with doing that, but is that a possibility that we can move to something that's a little more aesthetically pleasing than the runway?
Angie.
Yes, we did look at using a stamped concrete. We purposely decided to not do that in these areas because we get a lot of snow storage and there's snow and salt from the road. That's a county road. And as you know, their road maintenance is different, has a different level of service. So they use a lot of salt. So we were really concerned that if we were to use the stamped concrete, we'd end up with a lot of spalling from the runoff from the road. So we can, discuss that, but I guess we've already done all of those other sections in the colored brushed concrete. The sidewalk is a different color, so I appreciate your comment. So the sidewalk will still be like a concrete sidewalk. The areas beside it will be the colored brushed concrete. So it won't be all gray, I guess. It'll be 2 shades of gray.
Instead of 50.
Exactly. So I think to be consistent with the rest of the work that we've done in the downtown, that was the decision to move forward with the brushed concrete for all those intersection areas.
Yeah, through you, Mayor, to follow up there. Yeah, there's a number of areas that we're gonna have to continually do as well across the street in front of the forget what the big building's called.
In front of the Memorial Hall.
Memorial Hall.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a huge area
Yeah.
there. And my concern is that ever
Sure.
gets done in the gray, it's not gonna be very aesthetically pleasing on that corner. So there's a lot of areas that we still have to do.
Mhm.
We've done a couple areas, but there's probably 10 other areas that we're gonna have to do down the road, and maybe moving to that
Mhm.
now.
Yeah. So yeah, that's a great point in front of the Memorial Hall. We've had that exact conversation that in that area in particular, we maybe do want to make a bigger investment in interlock or stamped concrete there. It's a bigger area. It's not as impacted by the road maintenance from the county. So we may want to look at and not having just the brushed concrete in that particular area because it is more of a showcase area.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
If I could just add to that too, quickly, through you, Madam Mayor, the stamped concrete as well is quite slippery. Hastings has done it kind of by the memorial as well. So in the wintertime, it becomes quite slippery. So when they decided to go brushed too, the brushed concrete actually adds more texture. So you reduce the slips and trips on there as well.
More grip.
That completes Department 20. I'm not sure if how council's going. Of course, I could talk about budgets all day, but if you want to take a break, this would be a good time for that.
Okay, maybe we'll take a 3-minute bio break. You okay? All right, we will continue on, Lane, with number 22.
Thank you, Madam
Department.
Mayor. So just before we get to 22, I just wanted to provide a bit of an update on procurement. As council would have noticed on my work plan, the policy relate as it relates to purchasing. It's been something we wanted to look at for some time, and so I just wanted to kind of brief council on that. In particular, I would say our policy is very consistent with the rest of the county because it was all premised on a template that the Association of Municipal Clerks and Treasurers had put together. So it's very consistent in terms of how we did that after there was a policy change legislatively through the Municipal Act. But we do want to take a look at that policy again, specifically on limits, because as we've mentioned already, the market has increased, and so some of those limits just don't reflect what we really should have, I think, to be efficient. But one of the other areas, we have a line in there where it talks about cooperative purchasing. And in the past, that cooperative purchasing has been more like when a lower tier would cooperate with the upper tier, that type of thing. And we do that pretty consistently. But over the last few years, there have been a number of purchasing organizations that have come together. A lot of it started through the Association of Municipalities of Ontario, through LAS. And they've really expanded that in the last few years in terms of the canoe purchasing program. And then there is a different organization, Kinetic GPO, and they also have a broad range of categories that would help us in terms of our purchasing. So just a couple slides there about the cooperative purchasing. We have been involved in that in the past. We were involved with LAS when we did the streetlight replacement program. And so we relied on LAS to do all of the vetting of the vendors, come up with the best product, the best price on the product, and then we chose a local firm to actually do the installation. So LAS and Kinetic GPO were members of that right now. Can you just advance me a slide there? Thank you. Okay. So not only do they kind of vet the suppliers and ensure that they're somebody that the municipality should be dealing with, they also take care of another important part in terms of legal compliance. So that's ensuring that in addition to what we would typically look at as a fair and open and transparent process, they also ensure that we're compliant with different trade agreements, and that we have, by them all coming together, we have greater bargaining power when it actually looks at that pricing. So we're proposing that we are going to use it in a number of additional areas this year. That's why I wanted to spend a little time on it. It saves a lot of time in terms of the RFP process, tender process, and trying to spec something out. And so as an example, getting into some of the other areas in Department 22 we're going to chat about. See on one of our loaders, for instance, if they have John Deere, they've already spec'd something out that's going to work for John Deere. It's something that we would use. And then we can go to a number of John Deere dealers and actually say that we're a member of Canoe or Kinetic GPO. They already are aware of it. We're going to get some preferred pricing, and we can have bids come in from a number of different dealers which deal with John Deere. So we're not just necessarily going to one, but it does ensure that they've already taken care of all those other processes that we need to have regard for. So just wanted to comment on that. And we will have I would say when the policy comes forward, we'll have a little bit more robust area in that purchasing policy with respect to cooperative purchasing, just because it is available. There's more than those two groups for sure. These two are a little bit more tied in with local government, but there is another group as well that's been around for a while that reaches out a little bit broader and includes more of that whole MUSH sector. So in terms of universities and schools and things like that as well. Well, that was a bit of an aside because we will get into it in Department 22 here on a couple of other units. This is not one of them though. The tandem replacement. There's one typo on this slide deck as well. So that should say at the very end, it should say 2024. This replacement has been in the works for a long time. It's been impacted by COVID. We have already tendered the chassis. We've had the price adjustment. We've had our build date, but we still do not have delivery. But that is anticipated in 2024. I think it's in Q1.
Yeah, it's actually in Q2. I think it's closer to June. Yeah.
Q2.
June.
So we'll know the chassis, we'll know exactly what's required, and then Adam would be moving forward with the RFP tender for the body, the sander body, and all the attachments on that. So we know what type of chassis we have, then we'd move forward with the rest of it. And our goal would be that would be delivered before we get into the winter season next year. Ideally, it'd be good if we got in the fall, really. So we had it all set up. So that's one of those long-standing replacements that's coming forward in the budget for this year. All of that is funded through the equipment reserve. The rubber-tired excavator is another one that's up for replacement. It's the brand that we use is a Volvo. We actually have I think the head is to be replaced on that as well in terms of brushing head and those types of things. Yeah. And I'm just trying to access that slide.
Actually, I have a question. Do we ever get asked by other abutting townships to borrow some of our equipment?
Madam Mayor, I don't recall any townships actually asking to borrow equipment. What we will typically do, I mean, if somebody was in a bind, we'd try to help each other out for sure. But on a regular basis is, kind of loaning equipment out. No, we haven't. We will reach out to other municipalities if they have equipment that we're interested in purchasing, and maybe kind of reach out to them and meet on site and maybe, use that equipment, just kind of get a feel for it and kind of demo it almost, right? But as far as actually loaning out equipment, we don't really get into that.
Okay, thank you. Deputy Mayor Black.
Through you, Mayor Sennis. So with the schedule of placements, you have pricing in here for all these items. Is that net of any
HST
adjustments for selling the old machine to the dealer or trade-ins? Is that a net number, or is that the purchase price and then the trade-in put back in the reserve somewhere?
Yeah, so in the majority of them, we try to include what is the actual purchase value, so you can see. And I think on the schedule for Public Works, I just hadn't had it pulled up. We have a separate line at the very top for trade-in value. So we actually would either look at a trade-in to the actual, or we would go out, and we've been very successful the last few years going out through Gov Deals or different things like that. So Gov Deals is another platform where we can put our equipment out. We had a number of tandems that actually went down to the East Coast, and I know that the purchaser in that instance has basically said, whenever you're going to do this again, let us know that you're putting on Gov Deals, because they, we take good care of our equipment and they know they're getting good value for it. So no, there's typically a separate line item on our replacement schedule for that.
I just follow up. Thank you. Yeah, sorry, I missed that on the schedule. It is there in red, actually. Should have popped out to me, but is when it goes to Gov Deal, is it an auction, or is it just posted for sale and members can purchase? Yeah, so we would put a minimum. We'd outline everything that's on there in terms of our process, photos, all that type of stuff. But Mike might want to maybe weigh in on that. Mike's our representative, and actually I think he kind of inherited that when our former manager of Public Works retired. So Mike's taken that over, but maybe Mike, you want to provide some background on that?
Yeah, through you, Madam Mayor, it is an excellent service. And Lane is 100% right. It is auction based, and you can set it up. You can set it up with any parameter you want, i.e. Size of bids, minimum size of bids, starting point, cutoffs that you won't sell. So let's say they're not willing to come and get it, or any parameter like that. Pricing could be your indicator. It's really quite a great service. Timelines and whatnot, it's all set up, and it's actually a fairly nominal fee that is paid, but it's more like real estate. We pay a small fee, the buyer pays a larger fee to get it. So no, it's been a great service, and we can move a lot of items because it's wide open to what we can do. We largely use it for vehicles, but it's also extremely transparent and very fair. So that's why so many municipalities use it. It's hundreds in Ontario that would use the services.
Thanks, Mike. Yeah, so what I was just trying to look up here, I thought it was the case, the rubber tire excavator actually is also a carryover from last year as well. So part of the reason there though was that we wanted to give Adam some time to spend with Shuey and the mechanics and go through our fleet and take a look at it. I think we're still working through that replacement schedule for a 10-year, but this is a carryover, and so it and the next item are two of the ones that we would look at purchasing through the cooperative purchasing agreement. In terms of the sweeper, definitely a lot of activity on that unit. Spring of the year, of course, the very last snowfall happens on a Friday, and on Monday we start taking phone calls about when you're going to get the sand off my court. But that's life. So that's something that Adam and his crew deal with. So we've used a number of different sweeper types over the years. I can think way back to the Lakefield one, which it was a dinosaur for sure. And the last couple we've got they've been based on more truck chassis. We're looking at switching to a different style of sweeper this year, but also being a little bit more versatile in our equipment, so that the sweeper is actually attached to a loader, and then the loader is available for use as well. So Adam and his crew have been down to the distributor, taken a look at it, reached out to different municipalities. I'm not sure of which ones locally here, but would use the unit. But it's definitely a different style. But part of it is the efficiencies on the job as well, in terms of what can actually take place. I'm not sure, Adam, if you wanted to add anything to that, or.
Through you, Madam Mayor. Yeah, Lane was right. We had 3 staff go down in August, I guess, to demo this unit down at Brantford. They had one on site. We sent our road supervisor, one of our mechanics, and one of our operators who runs the existing sweeper. We had positive feedback from them on the unit. City of Kenora and the City of Kingston, I believe, run the unit. They've had it for a couple of years now, so feedback is limited because it's not something that's been around a long time. With the market the way it is, standard road sweepers, we're looking at 12 to 24 months turnaround. So this is kind of filling a niche in that market as well, as far as availability. It's similar to a conventional sweeper in that it does have a mechanical broom, it has a gutter broom. The storage capacity is a little bit less, but it can actually operate at a quicker speed and offload quicker. So the whole unit kind of just lift up over a dump truck and it dumps, and then it kind of carries on its way. So yeah, really good feedback with it. It utilizes call it an air knife technology, I guess, where it actually kind of blasts the asphalt with high velocity air. So it actually picks up the fines, and then it goes through a bit of a filter and helps keep the dust down. So our traditional sweeper, we have to wet the roads down to kind of make a bit of a slurry with the fines, and then try to sweep that up and try to keep the dust down the best we can. We still do get complaints. This eliminates a lot of the extra water usage we have to do for that, as well as the dust complaints.
Question from Deputy Mayor Blatt.
Thank you, Mayor Sennis. So this is the loader and the sweeper is the 2 pieces. So we don't have a loader that would take this attachment on its own at this point.
We don't have an extra loader for this attachment. No, we have one at the landfill that's used there almost on a full-time basis through the summer. We kind of steal it back through the winter for loading sand and stuff. And we have an older Volvo loader we use typically at our pit. But yeah, no, this would be more, it would complement our fleet. and be available throughout the year as an additional loader, which we'd use, but yeah, during the sweeping season to be dedicated for that attachment.
Thank you.
Councillor Koulis.
Thank you, thanks. Just a couple clarification questions, like, I recognize it's new equipment, like new technology equipment, so I assume there's a computer involved. So do we have the technology and capacity with our staff to fix it, or are we gonna have to outsource fixing it? And the kind of follow-up there is, what's the longevity of this equipment, even if it's a niche?
Through you, Madam Mayor. There's wear and tear items on this equipment similar to a road sweeper, right? Really, the wear and tear is the brooms. So there are maintenance kits you buy for them and you have to replace those brooms almost annually, right? That's no different than a road sweeper. As far as technology goes, it's a newer technology, but it's not, that elaborate or that sophisticated. It does have a couple cameras, but I mean, it's not run autonomously. Like, I mean, there still is an operator there controlling everything. As far as the hardware goes, for troubleshooting and stuff, our diagnostic equipment wouldn't work on it, but we do have a local vendor in Brantford that would be able to help with that stuff.
So we have to ship it to Brantford, or can you come here? I'm just wondering, because that means additional costs.
No, typically with this equipment, you wouldn't ship your loader and your sweeper to Brantford. The technician would come to site.
Thank you.
Okay, through you, Madam Mayor, I realized that I didn't have a slide deck here for the trackless sidewalk machine. It was less than $250,000. I guess I didn't want to put a slide together for that. I'm not sure, but yeah. But that is in council's package, and it is outlined on the summary as well. That was another one of those cooperative purchasing items. And the reason I just wanted to chat about that a little bit, so the trackless unit, we have it in Lakefield right now. The plan is to replace that because we have a lot of sidewalks there, but then the old unit would actually come across and be used in Bridgenorth and be available as our urban area is going to expand. We currently in Bridgenorth area use a small Kubota, and it's kind of maxed out. We'll probably continue to use that in different areas, and we always take a look at the two departments there, Public Works and Parks and Rec, and see if we can somehow cooperate on that. So the trackless unit is up for replacement, but I just did want to make the comment that we're not looking at getting rid of the existing one. The thought would be it wouldn't have as much wear and tear on it over in Bridgenorth because there aren't as many kilometers, but that we would be able to get it over there and get it closer to that area.
Okay. Question from Deputy Mayor Black.
Thank you, Mayor Sennis. So like the sweeper, we have the added advantage of the extra loader for the rest of the year. Is there any kind of sidewalk cleaning equipment where the power unit could take other utility things that we could use in the summertime for?
Yeah, Adam could definitely weigh in on that. We do have other units, and we used the trackless unit actually for roadside maintenance and things like that. But maybe Adam, if you want to go through that.
More of a year-round extent.
Yeah, through you, Madam Mayor. Yeah, the trackless unit definitely has some attachments we can use, and we do put a brusher on it. So an articulating brush arm. So we'll do a little bit of roadside maintenance with that. We outfit that, and we do a lot of the trail maintenance with that unit. So it does have, year-round use for sure.
Okay, thank you.
So the last item, just in Department 22, is a replacement of some two-way radios. We have a number of units that haven't yet been upgraded to the new digital format. So we're getting by with some handhelds at this point in time. These would actually be in some of the different units. And so the fire department switched a few years ago. We had a few that were able to switch over to the new technology, but we just have the last few numbers to switch over there.
Lane, did you want to talk about the landfill compactor now too? Because that is in that department. It wasn't on your summary list.
Yeah, so we could definitely go into the compactors. Actually, we're proposing that would be purchased now. So that wouldn't be in the 2024 budget, but it'll be in a 2023 budget amendment.
Okay.
Right. So Adam has a separate report on that. So it's up to council if you wanted to deal with that now, or we can deal with it later.
Yeah.
So that's a separate item on the agenda, and maybe Adam, you could just go through a bit of your report in terms of where that is. It definitely is going to be coming out of the equipment replacement reserve. So it would change the opening balance of that reserve for sure.
Give me a second, I'm just loading that report up. Through you, Madam Mayor, we ran into some issues this past summer with our existing compactor up at the landfill. A couple of the bolts on the axle, the frame kind of let loose and ended up damaging some of the transmission. So we looked at options of replacing the transmission, repairing it. Given the age of it, it's kind of a niche market for landfill compactors, right? There's only a few players in the industry that make those units. That particular transmission, we couldn't buy an aftermarket or a new unit. It would have to be refurbished, so sent away. We got some pricing on that. And subsequently, as we're getting pricing on it, we had some issues with the fuel injector on it. So we kind of added those two items together, and we were in excess of $100,000 to repair a 14-year-old compactor with 14,000 hours on it. So we kind of put the brakes on repairing it and just kind of had a wholehearted look at, is it worth sinking that kind of money into the unit? We looked around. There's a company down near St. Catharines that sells refurbished compactors. They start around $250,000 just for a refurb unit. Reached out to some contacts at the City of Peterborough landfill. Tomlinson, who manages the landfill for the City of Peterborough, they were in the process of ordering a new one. They were over a year out for lead time on it, and they were close to $1 million for a new unit. And that was a bigger unit than what we have. It was probably 2 models up. Through that contact, though, he did mention that they operate a landfill up in Arnsbriar. That contract was coming to an end at the end of the summer, and they had surplus equipment up there. And it happened to be that it was the exact same make and model of compactor as we have at our landfill. So this summer, we kind of took a road trip up. We had a look at the compactor. We brought staff, including one of our mechanics up, had a look at it, gave it a once over, thought it's pretty good value. Talked to the operator on site who wasn't actually staying with that company. He was going to stay at the landfill with the next provider. So didn't really have any skin in the game, and kind of gave us, the goods on the unit, and got really good feedback from the operator. Good, reliable unit. So we kind of negotiated with Tomlinson on a price that we thought was fair. And there was a bit of back and forth at Tomlinson whether they wanted to give the unit up or repurpose it. And ultimately they decided to entertain our offer. So that's what I'm coming back to council for. I'd like to make the recommendation that we move ahead with that purchase. That would end up being our primary landfill compactor, and then we take our older unit and use it as a spare parts to replace anything that goes in this other compactor.
Okay, so I don't know if there are any questions of Adam, but there is a recommendation in front of us that Councillor Henry, you would be willing to move that recommendation, and that is to, and Deputy Mayor Black, to execute a purchase agreement for the sum of $120,000 plus HST with Tomlinson Environmental Services Limited, and that the 2023 budget be amended to include this item. All in favor? That's carried. Thank you very much. Helene.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So switching out over from equipment over to structures now. And as council will recall, structures is a new area for our municipality that we got into when we started into the asset management world. Realized that structures could be something other than a bridge, and so we had our engineer do a review of all of our large culverts and identified it about a half a dozen or so. So we developed a new department, Department 26, had the review by the engineer, and all of our structures are in good condition. But he did outline 2 areas where the guards or the guide rails by the culverts need some work. So Fothergill Isle is the largest project for that. The other is over on the 7th line. So last year we did have an amount in the budget, but it is new area for us, and given the pricing and things like that, we didn't have sufficient funds to move forward last year. We've dealt with the county staff and got some better estimates there, and so it's proposed that the Fothergill Isle steel beam rail system would be replaced this year. So that's not just at the actual culvert, but it's the entire causeway approach and both sides. There's been some question with respect to liability and things like that, and that's why I just wanted to stress that the actual structures themselves are in good condition. This is just the roadside guides as we go up to it. Adam and I were taking a look at the review done by the engineer, and it is very comprehensive. It looks at every aspect of the culvert, everything around in the area, vegetation on the side of the road, different things like that. The one picture to the right, the council can see there's not a lot of clearance between where your actual road surface is and the top of the guide rail, and that was something that was noted as well. So the new guide rail system should take care of that, and then we would move on and look at the 7th line in the next few years.
Okay, I think we missed street lighting.
Thank you. Yeah, so we wouldn't have a slide on our slide deck for that. There's 2 components on street lighting, and one of those we will be able to take off. So the Chemung Causeway, it's a contribution to the county project. So this is our last contribution. We contributed 100,000 to the multi-use pathway, 70,000 to the street lighting, and we had agreed to 190,000. So it's 20,000 that would go to the additional street lighting project. So that's a straight contribution to the county. So not our asset, just a contribution. The second item, which is on the summary and outlined in the package, is capital maintenance for a pole replacement up in the Coyle Crescent subdivision. Adams had some other contractors in to provide some additional quotes and realized that this is at a state where we need to move ahead with that in 2023. But the good news is that it would not be as expensive as we were anticipating, because it wouldn't have to be done in the wintertime. So this can be handled as a maintenance item in Department 23 and 2023. So 20,000 would be a contribution, and the other, I think it was 10,000 at the time, that will come off of the capital list. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Oh, question from Councillor Koulis.
Just to go back to the structures, I just want to clarify in regards to the liability. Is there a temporal timeline that we have to meet with MTO's restrictions on regards to the barrier? Like how soon do we have to get that done?
Through you, Madam Mayor. The comprehensive DML's report identifies some of the items based on priority ratings, right? Really, there was like an urgent within 1 year, 1 to 5, and 5 to 10. This was really within the 1 to 5 years. So it wasn't an urgent need. It wasn't a now need, like less than a year. They kind of identified it as that 1 to 5 year timeline. So we're well within that. As far as MTO guidelines go, these older guide rails don't meet current standards regardless. So I mean, that's across Ontario. When you're replacing them, then you typically meet new MTO requirements, and that's why we're looking at the steel beam guardrail. So it's not necessarily that guardrail, you know, it was compliant in the day, right? And if we're going to replace it because it's deteriorating, then we've got to meet the new standards. But you know, not my legal standing, but I think like based on the DML's report, they haven't identified it as an urgent need, like it's a now need. It's a 1 to 5, so we're well within that time frame to replace it.
Okay, thank you.
Great. Just before we go on to another department, I just wanted to once again emphasize that we are partnering with the county on a number of areas. So in the Ward Street design, for sure, the multi-use pathway and lights on the Causeway project, that's just a bit of a profile of the Causeway project that's included on the slide. And while we contribute to county projects, we also coordinate on behalf of the county as well. So we'll get into this in a little bit farther along, but our CCTV stormwater work, we actually cooperate with the county on that. They provide funding to us for their structures, and we take care of those ones.
Just wanted to mention before we leave that, in case not everyone is aware, the lights were supposed to be installed on the Causeway, but they're on back order. We're not sure when they are going to be coming in. We've heard January, and I don't know that they would be installed by the contractor at that point in time in the middle of winter. So they are on their way, and it keeps that portion of the job not being completed until that finally gets done. Correct, Adam?
Through you, Madam Mayor, correct.
Deputy Mayor Black.
You just on the, thing again, obviously it's not gonna be completed and ready for full use, until next year, but, now that we have a dedicated sweeper in Bridgenorth, are we going to be able to, clear the multi-purpose pathway through the winter, so residents who want to walk from Innismore, Bridgenorth or Bridgenorth, Innismore don't have to go on the paved surface of the road to get there?
Through you, Madam Mayor, our intention right now, as it stands, is not to be plowing the multi-use path across the causeway.
Thank you.
Okay, over to Department 33, and really it's, well, it is our landfill site. This is to do with waste diversion. So this is a second year of the food cycler pilot program. We're still referring to it as a pilot. It has had great results. We are looking at essentially the same program as last year in terms of contributions from the ratepayers and from the municipality. Lily's got some great feedback from last year's program. Would also look at, she has good, I think, an email list of those folks. Would look at doing the same idea with this year's batch of candidates that we come forward. I don't think we'll have any problem with this program in terms of success again in selling out all of the units that we have here. I think there's been some questions about the number of units and should we expand it? And I think that our approach at this point is just to do the same program as we had last year, fulfill a need, which is out there in the community, and then wait to see what the county does with respect to their program for organics. And so that's
Yeah, I'm going to turn it over to Deputy Mayor Black for his question. But before I do, I understand that there are 70 people that are on a list waiting for the next stage of this to happen. And they're the people who knew about the first stage. Once we make it public, I think the rest of these will go very quickly. Deputy Mayor Black.
Yeah, through you, Mayor Sanders. No, I appreciate that comment. I think it's been a very successful program. The only thing I would comment on is looking at all options as far as manufacturers. Unfortunately, we've had ours replaced already after 9 months of use. Now we use it every day. And I'm not sure that's the typical home, but we do a lot of recycling. And we've had to have it replaced. So there's no issue getting it replaced under warranty. But I think we have to look at options for extended warranties. If we're buying 250, asking the company to extend it to a 2-year warranty. And again, looking at other manufacturers as well. And there's probably a lot more history out there on the service side of the units. That sort of thing. I think we need to make sure that we look at all different manufacturers as well.
Angie?
Yeah, we can definitely take a look at those things. The useful life of these machines are generally 7 years. They do a lot of work. So yeah, we've had a couple of units that have failed though. So sorry to hear that. But we'll take a look at some of those other options if they're available.
Councillor Koulis.
I just want to clarify how many units, or sorry, what is the price of each unit? Has it gone up since the last pilot?
Well, we're going to be able to confirm all those details once we get council's endorsement to move forward with the project. I think they were about 350. And then we provided a subsidy. Oh, you're making me think now. It was either 100 or 150. Yeah.
Depending on the unit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah.
I'm just wondering because to contribute to what Lieutenant and Deputy Black has said, I know a number of people who are not on the waiting list, especially in the Innismore Garden Club, and want to be on the waiting
Yeah.
list. So I think we do need to increase numbers if we can, and I just don't know if that needs to be discussed here or what that's going to look like after we pass this motion. Because they're asking for the website and I don't have it. But I also wanted to point out another thing. how much do we have in the sustainability reserve? Because there's a number of points in this budget where it says sustainability reserve and we don't have a clear number on here.
About 375.
Okay, so we do have. And then one more follow-up, sorry. To point to kind of build on what Deputy Mayor Black has said too. I've had a few issues, but I've troubleshooted on my own just because I'm mechanical and I keep my stuff in the fridge, which keeps down the cost. So I've never replaced a filter. I think so. A couple things here are like the educational portion of this. So is any of the money going towards educating the public further, like building upon what we've already done?
Well, we've got a great email list, so we can communicate directly with users for free.
Okay, but like educational resources in regards to what to do with it, how to. I just do different things. So
Sure.
I know everyone has different households. and
Yep. Yeah.
lifestyles, but
Yeah. So yeah, all that information, there's like the manuals and some of the tips have been shared with users. Yeah, maybe we could think about using our Speak Up Selwyn page to kind of engage that group on, yeah, maybe tips that other users have. So I think we could probably set something like that up through that page.
okay, and then kind of follow up to that, is there any cost associated with doing that we need to roll into this?
No,
search?
no, we've got Speak Up Selwyn and we have the staff to do that. Yep.
Thank you.
Okay, over to stormwater. So, one part of the stormwater is the Strickland and Prospect Street underground work. So as part of that, that's really to the bottom end of seeing there are a number of structures there that we can access and to ensure that we have proper drainage. So that's really just part of that same overall project, but we will allocate there about $43,000 to that project. The larger project in stormwater is the completion of the CCTV project. That's basically looking at all structures and all stormwater mains in the township. And I would say by far the larger component is in Lakefield, and we haven't completed the job there in Lakefield. But there is actually stormwater and catch basins throughout the township. So if you can think of all the different urban areas, Woodland Acres, in Bridgenorth in particular, there's a good combination of county underground work and township work. And in many instances, we're the receiver of the county's stormwater. Over in Ennismore as well, but then there are pockets at various subdivisions, Four Corners, things like that. So it's all been documented as to where they are, and this project would actually outline the condition of them so that we can appropriately plan that into the future. This is an ideal candidate for the conditional grant, the OCIF grant. So it's the Ontario Community Investment Fund, and that's where we've funded the existing or the work that's previously been done, and that's where it's proposed that we would complete this work. We'd move out and actually do some direct, we have an RFP, but then do some direct correspondence with some of the suppliers in the industry and that we've dealt with before, just to ensure that they're aware of it and that they can give us some competitive pricing. And that kind of wraps up the section with respect to public works. As we'll see later, like a large area of investment out of about $4.5 million, probably about 3 million overall when you look at all those different areas. But over to Parks and Rec, I may not hit all of these in order in terms of the slide deck, but definitely some work at the Lakefield Marina. In terms of our review before, when we looked at the wharf, we were doing some dive work there with respect to the water treatment plant. And so when we did that work, we had the diver also look at the wharf that was installed by Drain Brothers back when we took over the marina. And it's in excellent shape. So that was good news. But this assessment would take a look at the condition on the boardwalk and the ramps, any of the boards that are on the docks, those types of things. So the idea would be there that we would have some of that stuff actually kind of taken taken up, take a look at it, see if there's some reason for some of the settlement, some of the areas, do the boards need to be replaced? If the boards are in good shape, what are the actual timbers like underneath it, you know, the joists, those types of things. So just be some work there to ensure that the marina continues to be in safe repair, basically.
Question from Deputy Mayor Black.
Thank you, through you, Mayor Sennis. Yeah, I think this is important work. A lot of docking material now is the PVC plastic decking instead of wood, which has a much longer life cycle than cedar and so on. Is that being considered as a replacement option? It might be 10% more expensive on the front end, but it doesn't have to be replaced for ever.
Yeah, I would say what's outlined here is more the condition assessment and maybe some interim steps for things that are now needs, I guess I would say. But I think we could probably get our person that's going to review this to weigh in on that, maybe some of the costs of that long term. And I'm not sure if that's an approach that Parks and Rec would want to take in terms of that type of thing versus pressure treated or cedar.
Yeah, through you, Madam Mayor. It would definitely be all part of it. If that is the recommendation from a recycling and reuse perspective, it has great value as well. And certainly longevity. So it would be in the overall review of it, that would be a recommendation that we'd want so we can do a comparison. We just have to be careful. There are some now needs, as Lane said, we can't have a board be unsafe or be if we need to replace a board, we may have to do some small amounts, which is kind of what we've been doing now. But in a fulsome look at it, certainly looking at all options is the intention.
Follow up through Mayor again. Yeah, and I was looking at more of the pictures of the new docking and stuff like that we're proposing to put in, and it all showed the cedar boards on them, which they get splinters in 5 years down the road, and we're replacing a lot of them, whereas the PVC stuff is 20 years, you don't have to touch it kind of thing. I get replacement, you got to replace with similar materials or you're running into some surface issues and stuff like that. New things we're buying, like docks and that are in this part of the package, consider the plastic decking as opposed to wood. There've been no maintenance for many years on it.
Councillor Boyko.
Thank you, through you, Mayor Sennis. Mike, I see this study as living, when completed, living beside the marina utilization study, and I see its value and support it. I'm wondering if, when this is being looked at, that is the wood decking around immediately beside the marina, whether it would be possible to walk the person and the process up the road to take a look at some of the trail farther up, to see the condition of some of those things that I know the Trail Committee has said needs to be looked at.
Through you, Madam Mayor, that's certainly something we could do. I think when Water Street was being done, I think we're pretty aware of what condition that's in. There's everything they picked up, ripped up, removed, showed the same aging, 20 years, and the structural pieces are, we have to do something in the next few years. So we can certainly get another opinion, but I think the opinion is correct, and I think we're aware of it. Now we have to make a decision on what that looks like. Is it like for like? Is it armor stone? Is it what that makes the most sense?
Right.
So.
Thank you. And a follow-up. Yeah, and we replaced that one section with armor stone because it made sense to do it at the time. And I support that fully. The second question, because you're looking at the physical structure of the gardens just north of the marina building, where shrubs were planted that were no doubt tiny shrubs, and now they're behemoths. And I think, now, what do I know about shrubbery? Nothing. But it looks like you're going to need heavy equipment to dig those things out, because you're never going to be able to to trim them back. And we're looking at possible damage that has been done because that hasn't been maintained. Will that be a part of this study? The walls and the structure around those gigantic shrubs?
And through you, Madam Mayor, I'm not sure it'll be part of this, but it is on my work plan to address that and the gardens. They're ongoing concerns. Most of our gardens are maintained through volunteers, whether it's in Ennismore, Bridge North Beautification, or as you guys are all aware, the hundreds of volunteers that we get in Lakefield. So that's, you know, that's something we have to address, because those ones, we did have a neighbor maintain one of the gardens. She planted it and maintained it, but she's since moved away. So we have to have a more permanent plan. The junipers that you're speaking about, we did knock back about 50% last year, but clearly not enough, because if it's still not apparent, it's like a haircut. You might need another one. So unfortunately, you know, that is an area that we have to have a bit more of a permanent, because when those junipers were planted, you're right, they were probably nice and manageable, and frankly, it doesn't get used much anyways. So there are a number of options that might be better than exactly what's there. It would take some big equipment to take out all the junipers, but that is part of the work plan for next year for Mark and I to address that and the gardens.
Great. I'm happy that it is. And one more follow-up, if you would, Madam Mayor. Yeah, I'm glad that's going to be looked at, because it is one of the more popular places in the village of Lakefield and so on, and we draw a lot of visitors there, and a lot of residents like going there and enjoying the beauty of the area. Something else that while not directly tied to this capital, but directly tied to what you were just mentioning, is the possibility of looking at the weeds that grow up all over the sidewalks and all over the streets, not just in Lakefield, but in other urban areas of the township. So I'll leave it at that, because it's not directly pertinent to what we're talking about with respect to the capital budget, but it is respect to what you were just mentioning about your work plan. So thank you very much.
Deputy Mayor Black.
Yeah, through you, Mayor Sennis. Yeah, just to follow up on Councilor Boyko's comments with regard to the trail. You know, as my motion at the last council meeting with respect to looking at the trail as a year-round, a portion of the trail as a year-round through the recreation and trail review. So I you know, while there are repairs that need to be done in the next few years there, I would hope that we hold any work there until we get that review back and look at options for creating a walking surface to complete the walkability and accessibility of Water Street in the winter time. So we all recognize that work has to be done there. Like you said, we've seen it, but I'd like to see the recommendations from that review before we throw any more money at things to do with the trail wall in there.
Yeah, through you, Madam Mayor, that's absolutely part of making sure we do it right and the multi-year plan.
Thank you.
Hey, Madam Mayor, I'll just carry on. As I mentioned, it's not exact order. I just tried to group things together. So the floating dock, which is along Water Street, that would be right beside the ramp. That's just, once we got the new ramp in, realized that the next phase of that is ensuring that when folks use it, they have a spot to be able to just temporarily tie their boat up when they move things along. So that's outlined on the plan as well. All of these purchases in Parks and Rec, with respect to the boardwalk review, Hague Boulevard docks, trees downtown, the Stanley Street Trail, and the boat ramp are all unconditional grant funds. We don't really have sufficient reserves in Parks and Recreation right now for any of those expenditures, so we take those out as one-time expenditures out of the unconditional grant.
Can I ask a question? While we're cleaning up down on Water Street, is there anything we can do about that one building that appears to be falling down?
In the water?
Yeah. I recognize that it's privately owned, but it's going to look so nice down there. And we've got this.
Sure. Okay. Angie's going to weigh in on that one.
Yeah, I could have Brianna stop in and chat with the owner to see if they might be interested in some facade improvement there.
I don't think it's just sod improvement. I think the
Sorry,
whole building is
sorry.
kind of.
Yeah,
You're
CIP,
joking, right?
the facade. They have painted it in the past. Yes.
What was that?
I didn't say
facade.
sod. I
I
said
thought you said sod.
sorry.
Yeah, I thought you said sod. Sorry.
To move on to the kayak and canoe launch improvements. So we were successful in our grant application last year on that. And so there's the scope of the project actually grew as well, because we were looking at some improvements over at Isabel Moore's Park for kayak launch or canoe launch. And then we were successful in the grant application through the Inclusive Community Grants Program. And it looks like we'll be able to put in two. So one at Isabel Moore's Park, which would assist in the launch. So launch of kayaks or canoes or different things like that, and definitely improve what we have there now, make it safer. And the additional would be across the river at the public beach. And that's the image that's to the left, and that would allow for a fully accessible launch along that section. And I know we'll have to have some additional discussions with respect to parking, access along the beach and different things like that. But this is a first step in terms of access to the waterway.
Councillor Colas.
I'll just, sorry,
Mhm.
sorry. I'll just add, like, I chatted with Lane and Janice and Angie yesterday about accessible water, and I just want to highlight to our fellow councillors that at the accessibility meeting last week, I asked to have put on the work plan what accessible water access looks like. So it's great that we already have these, but the question is accessible to who and how, because there's no clear structure on what is accessible and what's not. So this is great progress, but my follow-up questions yesterday were, well, do we have accessible parking at the beach? And I don't think we do, because it's not a paved parking lot. So then it questions of who's going to access it, when and how. So there's a lot to be done. But it does also speak into the trail conversation to which we came up earlier. So I just wanted to make that comment to say it's a work in progress. This is great. I'm so glad this is underway. But I think there's a lot more metrics that we have to think about logistically for different ages and stages of life.
Thank you.
Thank you. Some additional parks and rec. So this is along the Stanley Street, and this is basically asphalting a section of the trail that's been utilized there. This will tie in with the sidewalk network, and there's been a long-standing process there where we tie in with the sidewalk network in the center of the village. And so from say Albert Street, Reed Street, through that section, the trail is actually maintained. That goes back some 20 years, I think. And that was in advance of the Concession Street sidewalk. So that was a way to link into the sidewalk network in the village. So this last little section would take it from down by the train station up to the sidewalk network along Queen Street. And it would allow for better winter maintenance of that section because it'd be asphalted.
Deputy Mayor Black.
So just to clarify, this is a part of the multi-use trail that is cleared with our sidewalk equipment?
Yeah, so there is a section, and I don't know if it ends at Albert. I'm not sure, or if it goes right over, but I think it goes from Albert to up to this juncture. And it was something, I think, a good 20 years ago that was put in place. As they mentioned, it was in advance of the connector along Concession Street. So it was a way to tie those all in together.
Yeah, that makes sense. So did that have to be done through a resolution of council, because it is multi-purpose surface as opposed to sidewalk, and I understand the minimum standards have to be maintained. So did that council put a motion forward to
I-
To do minimum standards on that piece of.
Yeah, I
trail.
can't remember every meeting in the last some years, but I actually do believe that.
Remember that one?
Actually,
I was probably on council back then.
I actually thought that
Yeah.
I actually thought that
Would have been me.
I actually thought that did come forward to council because of the fact that it wasn't.
Not
But
a sidewalk, yeah,
yeah,
perfect, thank you.
but I can't guarantee that. But and just before we leave Parks and Rec, yeah, we have the trees project downtown. We had applied over the last number of years to replace a number of trees in the downtown core. We haven't been successful doing that, but that doesn't mean that we're not going to keep kind of trying to do that. But at this point in time, it's in the budget as funded through an unconditional grant, just so that we can move forward and get that project completed. So not only tree replacement, but also metal grates around the bottom of the trees to ensure that we can get in there and take care of the maintenance of the tree and the watering and that type of thing as well. And the other point on this slide is with respect to the campground. So it is coming up that we've finalized our design and tender for that large infrastructure replacement at the campground. Just noting once again on the record that would be internally financed and paid for by the operation. So there wouldn't be any tax dollars going to that. The campground amounts are not currently included in that $4.4 million. But they are included as an active project that we would anticipate moving forward with in the fall of 2024. Mike and Orca staff would definitely be reaching out to the campground folks, letting them know the timeline for replacement of the infrastructure. They would have to move some of the units off-site before the end of the year. And I believe the operating season next year would probably end earlier than normal as well. So we're getting close on finalizing that project.
Did you want to comment?
Sure. I thought you were asking me a question, but I think preemptively. Despite a few small hurdles in communication, we found that by letting people know a year in advance with things like the deck, we had 100% compliance. So, we can't do better than that.
No.
We've kept the number of seasonals at a very, very high percentage. This would be a similar sort of thing. We would need 6 weeks to make sure we can get it done. So that means asking people to leave 8 to 10 days early, October 1st, if this gets approved. And then we would also have the whole year to plan it out and decide which of the trailers might need to be moved, removed temporarily, or whatnot. By having that amount of time and by getting out in front of the construction season bidding wars, i.e. early in the year, I think we can do very well and still make sure that neighbors, seasonals, transients are fully aware that it'll be a slightly shorter season, given that we, it's such important necessary repairs, which this was done in the 70s, so none of us will need to be around when it gets repaired again, or maybe one of us.
Okay. Deputy Mayor Black.
Thank you, through Mayor Senes. Any idea what the cost would be to install park? I'm just thinking about how it's financed this one. Any idea?
We have been working with DM Wills to get estimates. I think the best thing for good pricing is to not be too, but yes, we do have very good estimates.
7 figures, 6 figures?
7 figures, yes.
So more than $1 million, and we'll leave it with that number.
Yeah.
My question. So, given this is going to be all basically paid for by direct
Users.
on the spaces, it's probably going to be over a 20-year period or something, or what would you amortize that? We're going to have to carry that debt for the campground for how long before it's paid off?
Yeah, so there's two approaches, right? First of all, the first thing is that we are having meetings coming up within the next month with Orca to take a look at the status of their operation after the first year of operation. So I think it's December that we meet with them, go through a review. And we would be able to take a look at, in the initial year, what was the net that came out of that and what's our cost share or what's our profit share, I should say. So that's one approach, and to try to pay that off as soon as possible. The other is to take a look at it and say, what's the useful life of the different components and amortize it over that period of time. And because it's internally financed, it would be set up as unfinanced capital, but not necessarily reflected as debt per se, because we would do it here internally, and we would ensure that we charge interest that's comparable, so that we don't pay somebody else interest, we're paying ourselves interest.
Yep.
So follow up, Mayor Sennis, I guess my concern is, do the residents that are there now, or the campers, I should call them, understand that what they're paying now could easily double. If we're talking millions of dollars shared amongst, I forget how many campsites, 100 sites or so.
108.
108 sites. Yeah, again, depending on how you amortize it and so on, it could easily double what they're paying for those sites today. And is that a palatable option for most of those campers? I think those things need to be explored as well, because it's a very expensive rental, and if that just becomes a park, I'm fine with that too, because I'd like to know that those residents are going to be prepared to pay that 7-figure number to replace that.
Yeah. And I think we need to be clear that Orca is the one that's setting the rates and setting the operation for the campground and different things like that. And how we've laid out the budget so far based on our share that we receive, what our costs are, different things like that, doesn't take into account our profit sharing. So we're relying on our profit sharing based on existing rates to then fund the investments. So while there would be, typical annual increases and things like that, at this point in time, we're like I wouldn't think that it would be a doubling of the rates, and that's something that Orca would have to be on side with anyway. Yeah.
Just as Bob, so you're saying our share of the profit is going to fund
The
the
goal,
replacement of the infrastructure?
the goal from day one, when we started talking about putting this in the hands of Orca, is that our share of profits, our share of the rental operations of boats, and our share of any ancillary amounts would fund the long-term investments in the campground.
Wow, that's not a great deal for the township. That infrastructure should be paid for by the users, frankly, in that particular situation.
That's exactly how that would be. The users that would be paying money to Orca would basically provide our share of the profits that would fund the infrastructure.
No, I understand that, but there's no benefit to the rest of the residents of the township if there's no profit brought back to us for other uses. If all that profit's going to be used to replace the infrastructure in there, we basically given up a very valuable asset in the township to individuals that are going to use it, and the rest of the township gets nothing out of it if that money is going to be used for that purpose.
I think that's too much of a soundbite explanation of the process. I think that we already have a component which is helping us through taxation, right? So the existing format that's in there right now already pays for some administrative costs. It already pays for some of the offset of the cost, right? And we still haven't determined the amortization period. So to suggest that there's no benefit, we already knew that there was a massive investment we had to make into that area. So it depends on when we're going to start sharing that, right? And then the other component would be on the internal financing of it. That interest will come back to us for sure and be guaranteed investment income.
I understand through Mayor Sennis, the past benefits to the township have been in the neighborhood of $40,000 or $50,000 a year. If this is a multi-million-dollar replacement, there's going to be nothing every year. All of that money is going to go towards this infrastructure. So anyway, I'll wait to see the plan come back, Lane, because I do have concerns that there has to be a benefit to the rest of the residents of the municipality for keeping this campground where it is. And if all of the revenue from it goes towards the infrastructure and supporting the campground, I don't see the benefit to the township as a whole. Just as a statement.
Okay, in terms of Parks and Rec, I'll carry on over to the arenas now. I think it was last year this time or at one other meeting, we definitely had provided an update to council about the Ennismore Arena floor. Mike's did a little bit more investigation on that. We definitely have some information from our odd report as well. And that will be part of the review. We'll have a report back to council at some point in time, but that's definitely why it's not being presented as a capital item this year. We do have though two pieces of equipment that need just typical overhaul. So there are compressors. We have different types and sizes of compressors at the two different facilities. So that's why maybe the dollar values are a little different at the two facilities. And I believe based on the explanation, there's different types of overhauls. One would be a more significant overhaul than the other, but more than to the fact that the compressors are just different sizes. So got a little bit of work to do at both of those facilities. And those are actually, once again, funded through the pump fund, the unconditional grant fund of the province. So if there's no more questions on recreation, library services. So obviously different setup with the library service when we have a library board. I can say to council, the board has had regard for reports that have been provided so far and have approved the capital which is included. A key point there is when we look at technology. First of all, in terms of procurement and purchasing, the library service has a much smaller threshold in terms of what is capital. So that's why you'll see smaller dollar values. And instead of $5,000, it's a lot smaller than that. And in terms of the technologies, specifically, they've outlined about $40,000 worth of expenses. Well, we do not anticipate that we're going to be spending $40,000 this year because of the longevity of the equipment that we have in place. The approach has been for some time now that we would approve all of the technology that really should be replaced if it fails, but as long as it continues to perform, then we don't replace it. What this does is it allows Sarah kind of mid-year to be able to replace something if all of a sudden we have a number of failures of monitors or different things like that. So, and that's funded through their reserve as well. So I just want to make that point to council. Well, it looks like $40,000 of replacement. There's a good chance that maybe that number could be $4 by the end of the year. So we just continue to have longevity in our equipment there. There's also some additional investments in terms of service and program investments. As I mentioned, it's kind of went through the board cycle through staffing their recommendations back to the board, and the board's taken a look at that and approved that to come from their funds. And with respect to signage, just some improvements. Of course, council would realize we've got a long-standing relationship at the library service with Community Care. So there's two different reuse or new to use stores, one in Bridgenorth and one in Ennismore. And all of the proceeds are shared 50-50 and all the costs are shared 50-50. So on this signage, our share would be $1,000 and that would be funded out of the actual fundraising proceeds that would come in. And that's all for library service.
I have a question from Councillor Koulis.
I don't know if Sarah on the line or.
Yes, she is. Yeah.
Sarah, Sarah, can you just clarify what the travel item collections are? Like, what is that kind of material or resources going to look like, and how does that program work?
Can you hear me? Hello?
Sarah, would you just be able to get a little closer to the mic?
I will try. Can you hear me a little better?
Not much.
Not too much. We're just going to do some adjustments here to the sound, Sarah. Try that, Sarah.
Hello?
A little more.
Hello?
Okay.
Go
I
ahead.
think as long as you speak slowly and clearly, Sarah, we should be able to hear you.
Okay. So through you, Madam Mayor, So yeah, as you know, the library is much more than just books. We offer a number of unique programs, and we have a number of special collections already. So to name a few, we have fishing rods, we have pickleball kits, we have disc golf kits, internet hotspots, CO2 monitors, watt readers, parks passes, and yeah, just to name a few of them. So really it's all about just providing access to items that can be expensive to purchase for the average person or that add up over time. So our travel collection operates the same way. Traveling is expensive for the average person or family. Once you book flights and accommodations, there's not much room left for other things. So our travel collection provides the average person with access to a number of expensive and otherwise infrequently used items. And just like a book, they can be checked out. So it's just kind of trying to cut down the cost of traveling. So yeah, we'll offer like travel adapters. So for a number of chargers, waterproof cases, items that will protect your credit cards from being, stolen, items like that.
Just a follow up there is, I know this is new and stuff, but is the longevity of these resources, because we're sharing them and they're likely to cross borders and be in different elements, what is the longevity of these resources? Are they 3 to 5 years, 10 years?
It really depends on the item. So there are a number of items that we hope to purchase. So yeah, some of them might only last us 3 years. Others, could last us up to 10. So it really depends on the item.
Okay, thank you.
So, and just as background for council, from a financial perspective, all of our books in our entire collection, it's anticipated that they're retired every 7 years. So even though we have books that are, in place a long time, from a financial perspective, they're amortized over a 7-year period. And then any of our collection is available to go up for resale as well. Okay. As I pretty much say every year, there wouldn't be a finance meeting without a pie chart. So this is council's view of the investments in infrastructure at this point in time, and keeping in mind that it doesn't include some of the other items that specifically we said are not included. You can see that the two large pies here are roads and roads fleet. But then when you look a little bit deeper into that, the lighting, stormwater, landfill, structures, those types of things, they easily take up almost another quarter. So the majority of our investments are definitely in the infrastructure of the municipality. A few more slides here that are not totally capital in nature. There's studies and some of those pending items that we were chatting about before. One which from a financial perspective, the strategic plan is like the umbrella document for everything that we have. So we have a really good strategic plan, and every other plan after that should fall underneath that umbrella document, should set the general direction. And I know that from a council report perspective, whenever we provide a report to council, whenever we have some type of a budget document, we always try to take that and tie it back to either a strategic plan area or a very key strategic plan reference. And so that's it's proposed that we would update our strategic plan, give our new council a chance to put their own stamp on it, and take a look at what we would be doing over the next 5 to 10 years. That's outlined it, and that's another one of those proposed sole source supply studies. The particular consultant that we've dealt with in the past really seems to get our township. They have a good understanding of the area. They've dealt with a number of the different departments, so not just say corporate and council, but also recreation, the community through a number of PICs and outreach projects, surveys, things like that. So that document, we're kind of excited to get the next 5 to 10 years ahead and move that forward in 2024. Asset management, we have another one of those annual placeholders there that's funded through the Ontario Community Investment Fund. At this point, I don't have a for sure amount that we're going to spend. We've always set aside about $50,000 from that fund And it gets into areas that all of a sudden, say, structures was a good example. As we got closer to finalizing our core assets, we realized that based on the new guidelines we'd found out about from the county of Peterborough, that we had structures that we didn't realize. So we had to put some resourcing at that from an engineering perspective. So there's money set aside for that this year as well. In terms of the structures themselves, Adam has a requirement to review those every 2 years. So there's a biannual review. Just given, as you can imagine, given the nature of the asset, the culvert in particular going to Father Gilile, you know, that needs to be well maintained and you can't have a failure in it, right? So that's on the agenda for this year. And we typically would have any type of just ongoing consulting or things like that in our operations budget, but we do have an ongoing issue with groundwater down at Terraview Heights. And so we've identified about $7,500 there for a final investigative study and a game plan on what we need to do with that surface water there. So those are the studies. And this new section that I had mentioned in terms of pending, so we have outlined 3 areas in the pending, which have either been mentioned before at council or we have grant applications in. One, it ties back to our climate change action plan and home energy loan feasibility plan. So the municipality partnered with Grey County to look at that Clean Air Partnership Fund. We were hoping that we would find out about that grant by this juncture, but we probably won't. I don't think we'll know until Q1 of 2024. And it's basically taking a look at how we can support our ratepayers to make home energy improvements through a loan program. And so there'd be a lot more information that would become forward on that. This is just the actual feasibility study aspect of it. And our contribution there would be $10,000. In terms of the bus shelters, there's money included in our grant with MTO to complete installation of bus shelters. But given the fact that we have a pilot study being reviewed right now in terms of feasibility and those types of things, that's on hold. We anticipate that the pilot study outcomes would be back in Q1. And then if based on council direction, and we consider what we do with respect to those shelters, but that would be funding at 100 cent dollars if that did take place. But at this point in time, that's just there as a pending item. And the last one is on the campground, and not specifically the infrastructure that we've talked about already, but the vegetative buffer around the exterior that would buffer from the campground to the marsh and different things like that. So that is also dependent on a grant application, and that one has been outstanding for some time, longer than we anticipated for sure. So those 3 items are not currently in the capital budget. So that kind of wraps up the slide deck. There is we have dealt with the issue previously that wasn't included in my cover report. We've dealt with Adam's report with respect to the budget amendment for 2023. So I would just go back to my cover report and the recommendations that are included in there. At this juncture, council, if they have any additional questions, management team is here to answer any of those, but recommendation is to receive the report to generally support the budget to go forward into the final budget for council consideration. And then a number of sole sourcing recommendations included there as well.
Right. Are there any other questions for Lane?
I'll just put on the right.
No. It's okay. It stopped. So, Councillor Boyko.
I have one question. It's very minor. I'm looking at your report, Lane, and the second bullet, it's got highlighted Fire Pro. Why is that highlighted? What's that?
Sure. So I wanted to make sure that we were aware of that. In the initial version that went out, it said Firehouse. which is the existing software.
Okay,
And it's actually Fire Pro that we're dealing to. So just in case the counselors saw the first version, that was why. So
Gotcha. Okay.
it is Fire Pro.
gotcha.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, so I don't see any questions, so I'm looking for someone to move the motion or the recommendation. Councillor Henry, Councillor Coulis is seconding, all in favor? That is carried. I want to thank you very much, Lane, you and your department and all the management for all the work you've done on this. Again, it's an excellent capital budget that you brought forward. I know a lot of thought and work went into it. Thank you on behalf of council.
Very well.
So we are going to move on in our agenda. We have a closed session. Is there any other new or unfinished business? Seeing none, I look for someone to move to go into closed, and it's for security of property of the municipality. Moved by Deputy Mayor Black, seconded by Councillor Boyko. All in favor, that is carried. We will adjourn to the other room. And we have 15 minutes before we have to have a curfew motion. So just letting you know.